Listen closely, the crown never shouts when it means business. It clears its throat. 2 notes from the House of Windsor landed within hours, one measured, institutional, and looking 10 winters ahead, the other small, human, tossed like a pebble into a crowded room. Together they changed the temperature, by a few quiet degrees, and if you weren't listening for it you might think nothing happened at all. But the old hands felt it, the hum of a machine being tuned under the floorboards, the laugh that loosens shoulders no memo ever could. Kensington went first. No balcony wave, no gold braid, just a sentence set in the polite black and white that says, "We've already begun. Sarah Rose will become Chief Executive of the Royal Foundation of the Prince and Princess of Wales." Titles can be heir. This one is oak. The foundation is the engine room where William and Catherine's slogans die and their promises live, early childhood and its ruthless long tail, mental health and the way a bad week can swallow a town, conservation, that reads like bills paid rather than speeches made. A CEO is not hired to polish plaques. A CEO is a foreman with a spreadsheet. Pick partners that deliver, join up silos that prefer to sulk, count the right things, bin the wrong ones, keep donors talking to practitioners without the usual translation errors, and turn issues closest to our hearts into budgets, timetables, and proofs that hold when the cameras leave. Continuity was smuggled in with the change. Amanda Berry, battle-tested through 3 years most CEOs would have cashed out of, doesn't vanish into a tidy thank you paragraph. She moves sideways into a new brief as Global Partnerships Ambassador, which is part diplomat, part rainmaker, part memory palace. Anyone who's watched charities grow up knows the trick. Don't throw away the map, because you've hired a new driver. Keep the person who remembers which door opens at which knock, which vice-chancellor answers on Friday, which US foundation will fund pilots, but not scale. William and Catherine's own words arrived in the register they save for steadying hands, warm, spare, exact. "We look forward, we are hugely grateful, no trumpets. Spanners. Tap, tap, tighten." This is the unglamorous craft of modern monarchy, and it is the only kind that endures. A dependable CEO means early years work that doesn't stall at awareness, but threads through midwives, health visitors, nurseries, school governors and, crucially, employers who can bend hours without punishing mothers. It means mental health projects that braid together schools, GPS, youth clubs, and first responders so a teenager isn't bounced from leaflet to hotline like a parcel with the wrong address. It means environmental schemes that live past a ribbon cut, because measurement was baked in and the local council was seated at the table before the first photo. This is the difference between a glossy brochure and a graph that finally tilts in the right direction. It's slow. It's dull to narrate. And that's why it works. And then, on the other side of town, under harsher lights and easier smiles, Prince Harry spoke the kind of sentence that turns down a room's volume by simply existing. He came for the Well-Child Awards, as he has for years, long before memoirs and documentaries taught strangers to feel fluent in his blood. Well-Child nights aren't staging posts, they are anchors. Parents who have forgotten what 8 hours of sleep feels like. Children whose courage is a daily task, not a headline. Carers with the kind of humor that keeps a spine straight when nothing else does. Harry walked in, shook hands, crouched to eye level, and asked a teenage winner the oldest, truest question in the language of siblings: "Does he drive you mad?" The boy grinned. "We get on." Harry chuckled. "You know what, siblings. 7 words and a door opened a fraction. Listen half a second longer and you hear why it landed. That single word carried a decade of noise with none of the sharp edges. It didn't bait, it disarmed. For a heartbeat the argument around the brothers shrank to the kitchen table size it always should have been, 2 boys made into men by the same corridors, the same photographs on mantelpieces, the same impossible last walk behind a gun carriage, who ended up needing different lives to breathe. Harry's further aside, that sharing a school can make things more challenging, had the wry flatness of a man who has done his homework the hard way. Then the conversation moved on, because rooms like that are not there to hold royal catharsis, they are there to hold families together for an evening. The laughter did its work. Fresh air in a heavy hall. Set side by side, the two notes read like a masterclass in how you go on after a year that could have hollowed a weaker house. William and Catherine are building out scaffolding you won't see on a balcony, hiring for method, not mythology, keeping institutional memory inside the tent, signaling that their foundation is a workshop, not a stage. This is how you build a decade without paying interest you can't afford. Audit what worked, admit what didn't, collect dull victories, repeat. Meanwhile, Harry keeps faith with a small crowd that never asked for a feud and never cared for a brand. His best pitch remains human-sized, a joke that lands, an aside that lets a teenager know a prince's house has the same arguments as yours, and that public life is sometimes just the discipline of turning up on time and making room for someone else's story. The older I will recognize both kinds of competence without reaching for a handbook. Leadership changes at a serious charity are not palace intrigue. They are housekeeping. The right chief executive is the one person in the room who can fuse three worlds that refuse to share a charger: government, all rules, philanthropy, all appetite, and frontline practice, all reality. A good one can make the left hand finally understand what the right is paying for. Keeping Amanda Berry close means the British brief can travel to Brussels, Boston, Bangalore, without reinventing itself at every border. It also says something rarer than novelty ever can: stability. The Wales operation has learned the lesson so many institutions forget in their obsession with new don't bin memory: redeploy it. There is context to Well Child too, and you don't need a palace pass to hear it. Anyone who's done a hospital corridor at shift change knows that gallows humor and small kindnesses are the only currency that spends. Harry uses both well. A gentle joke about a brother isn't a provocation, it's a handshake under the table that says, I have won too, I know the terrain, I'm listening. For an institution often accused of speaking only in marble, that lived-in tone has a place. It says, without speechwriters, that royalty is still staffed by human beings who learned their manners where the rest of us did, on wet playgrounds and at kitchen sinks. Look under the paint and you'll see how these signals travel. The Foundation News told you where the Waleses intend to put their weight as the year turns, inside the machine. Expect fewer slogans and more service corridors, data dashboards instead of theme days, pilots scaled carefully instead of fireworks, partnerships that last past an election. The Well Child clip told you where Harry still finds oxygen, outside the machine, in rooms where titles buy nothing unless they're cashed in as attention. One is the long game of institution building. The other is the short, necessary grace of eye contact. Both serve the same idea when they are done well. Public life exists to make it easier to be a child, a parent, a carer, in a country that often asks too much of all three. Timing was not accidental. Kensington's spanner tap landed just as diaries hardened for autumn: school runs, hospital wards, barracks parades, hospice teas, council chambers that smell of polish and patience. This is when charities decide which projects survive winter. A CEO in the chair now will be judged by January on whether pilots got past the press release. The ambassador role gives Berry a passport to take British-built work to global tables that move at the speed of trust, not virality. Meanwhile, the Well Child evening offered a warm counterpoint: lights, applause, ordinary heroism framed correctly, reminding a skeptical public that the job can still put its hands where they should be. For all the whispers about reconciliation and countdowns, this week wasn't about fireworks. It was about calibration. William has learned to live by 4 verbs that don't trend: show up, read up, shut up, follow up. He hires like a man who expects to be audited in 20 years by a public that counts results, not ribbons. Catherine, whose wardrobe just told the country, "I remember Balmoral," without tapping the glass, will fold Sarah Rose into a rhythm that shames louder outfits. Call the head teacher yourself. Ask the matron what actually helped. Send thank yous properly and on time. Meanwhile Harry, who does not always trust rooms, trusts this one, and uses the only leverage that doesn't corrode, the ability to find the human quick, and say something useful without making himself the story. None of this cancels the other stories. The king's calendar remains a chessboard played carefully now. Camilla's job is still to keep the rhythm, which she does with a metronome built from habit and refusal, even when the smile lands half a second late. The brothers' distance remains what it is until it isn't, and no 7-word aside will ferry that river. But the public, especially the older part of it that has carried more funerals than festivals, knows what to value in a thin time: competence without drama, kindness without performance, the quiet admission that the show is not the work. If you want to see the pattern in motion, watch the small things. Does the foundation publish figures you don't have to squint at? Do health visitors talk about new training they didn't have last year? Do nurseries mention grants that arrived on time rather than promises that arrived late? Do local councils borrow early years templates instead of writing their own for the joy of waste? Those are CEO questions. And in the well-child world, does a teenager leave thinking a famous man listened rather than a famous man arrived? Did a mother laugh for the first time all week? Did a nurse feel seen? Those are the only metrics that count in rooms where you learn the names of medications before you learn the names of neighbors. There was no row. There was no morality play. There was the long, maintenance-heavy business of keeping faith with a country that wants fewer stunts and more solutions, and the short, necessary grace of reminding that same country that families are awkward, siblings are complicated, and laughter is not a betrayal. In the space of an afternoon and an evening, the heirs tightened bolts under the stage while the spare found the right joke at the right time. Different keys, same score. And if you caught a different chord, if Sarah Rose's appointment sounds to you like a fresh start rather than tidy succession, if Harry's siblings felt less like a shrug and more like a white flag, your ear may be right. In this house, little sentences have a way of becoming policy. Today it's a line in a press release and a throwaway at a microphone. In a month it might be a new data dashboard and a phone call that happens because a door that was closed found its latch. For now, the weather has shifted a degree or two in the right direction: steadier air in the engine room, warmer light in a hard hall. In a season that rewards shouting, that will do.